Get out of my sight. You clearly don't belong here." She didn't even look up from her phone when she said it. Elsa Murrow, 31 years old, senior partner at Caldwell and Pierce Investment Group in downtown Toronto, had a way of dismissing people the way most people dismiss a notification. One flick. Gone. The woman standing on the other side of her desk, young, maybe 22, wearing a parka that had seen too many winters, scuffed boots, hair pulled back into a practical bun that had nothing to do with style and everything to do with not having time, didn't flinch. She just stood there, calm, hands folded, waiting. Her name was Sable Oduya, 23 years old, the daughter of Nigerian-Canadian immigrants who had worked double shifts at a hospital laundry and a Tim Hortons for 15 years so their daughter could have options they never had. She was 5'4", lean, with the particular stillness of someone who had learned very early that reactions cost you more than they cost the people who provoke them. She had come in through the wrong door. That was the beginning of it. Not the wrong door literally. The wrong door in every way Elsa Murrow had been trained her whole life to notice. No blazer, no leather folio, no business card extended with two hands. She'd taken the elevator to the 41st floor of the Exchange Tower, holding a plastic sleeve with some papers inside, wearing a jacket with a broken zipper she'd been meaning to fix since October. And when the receptionist had looked at her like she was delivering lunch, Sable had said quietly, "I have a 3 o'clock with Ms. Murrow." The receptionist had paused, looked again, then said, "Are you sure?" Sable was sure. What Elsa didn't know, what nobody in that building knew, was that Sable Oduya had been writing code since she was 14 years old at a public library in Scarborough because their apartment didn't have a computer. She had taught herself Python from a book with a cracked spine she'd found in a box of donations. She had built her first app at 16, sold it at 19 for $60,000, and used every cent to pay off her parents' credit card debt and register for a computer science program at the University of Toronto, which she had completed in 3 years while working nights at a grocery store. She had done all of this without anyone opening a single door for her, and now she was standing in Elsa Murrow's office because she had a meeting. "I said you don't belong here." Elsa finally looked up. She took in the jacket, the boots, the plastic sleeve. Her expression arranged itself into something between irritation and amusement. "Whatever you're selling, we don't need it. Use the service exit on your way out." "I have a 3 o'clock, Sable said again. Same tone, same stillness. "With whom?" "With you." A beat. Elsa's eyes narrowed. "That's not possible. My assistant schedules my meetings. Your assistant scheduled this one." 6 days ago, the subject line was, "Proposed acquisition of TerraStack Analytics." Something shifted in Elsa's face. Not much, just enough. Because TerraStack Analytics was the reason Caldwell and Pierce was currently hemorrhaging credibility in the Canadian tech investment space. They had passed on it twice. Twice. And now TerraStack was being courted by 3 American firms, and Elsa's managing director had spent the better part of Tuesday afternoon asking, in increasingly pointed language, how they had missed it. What Elsa did not yet know was that the young woman in the broken zipper parka standing across her desk was TerraStack Analytics. Not an employee, not a rep, the founder. Here's what you need to understand about that moment. Elsa Murrow had built her career on a specific kind of intelligence, pattern recognition. She could look at a portfolio and feel where the risk lived. She could read a pitch in 8 minutes and know by the 4th slide whether the team had the grit to survive a bad quarter. She had made Caldwell and Pierce $11 million in the past fiscal year on instinct alone. But instinct trained exclusively inside a certain world has a blind spot the size of a building. Elsa had never once in her career had a founder walk into her office who looked like Sable Oduya. And so when her pattern recognition fired, it fired wrong. It said, "This is not a founder. Founders wear a certain thing. They carry a certain thing. They come through a certain door. This person came through the wrong door, and therefore she is the wrong kind of person." The decision was made before Sable said a word. Elsa picked up her phone and called her assistant. Did I have a 3 o'clock today? Her tone was the tone of someone expecting to hear that an error had been made by someone else. A pause on the line. Yes, Sable Oduya, TerraStack Analytics. You confirmed it yourself last Thursday. Elsa set the phone down. She looked at Sable. She said very slowly, "You're the founder, yes, of TerraStack, yes." Another beat. "Sit down," Elsa said, not warmly, not apologetically, like someone recalibrating rather than reckoning. "You have 15 minutes, Sable sat. She opened the plastic sleeve. She placed 3 pages on the desk, face down. She didn't rush. She didn't seem to notice the 15-minute ceiling or the clipped welcome or the fact that 45 seconds ago she had been asked to leave through the service exit. "I don't need 15 minutes, Sable said. She turned the first page over. "I need 4. She had built TerraStack's core algorithm at 21, writing the first version on a secondhand laptop in her parents' kitchen in Scarborough, with the fan running so loud she had to wear headphones. The algorithm did one thing with extraordinary precision. It identified infrastructure vulnerabilities in municipal data systems before they became critical failures. Not after. Before. In a country where aging city infrastructure was quietly becoming a national liability, TerraStack had a tool that every major Canadian city needed, and almost none of them knew existed yet. In 4 minutes, Sable explained the algorithm, the market, the current municipal clients, and the reason 3 American firms were circling. Then she turned the third page over. A number. A valuation. Elsa stared at it. She said, "This is what you're asking. This is what it's worth," Sable said. "Those are different things. I'm asking slightly less." The meeting lasted 40 minutes. Elsa asked questions she normally didn't ask in first meetings. Good questions. Specific questions. The kind you ask when you're trying to find the hole in something and the hole isn't appearing. Sable answered each one with the same steady economy of words. No inflation. No performance. Just the thing itself. When it was over, Elsa leaned back in her chair. "I'll need to bring this to the partners," she said. "I know." Sable put the pages back in the sleeve. "You have until Friday. After that, I'm going to San Francisco." She stood, zipped her parka as far as the broken zipper would go, and walked to the door. Elsa watched her go. Something uncomfortable was already starting in her chest, the kind of feeling that arrives when reality introduces itself to an assumption that had been living rent-free for years. She picked up her phone and called her assistant again. "Pull everything on TerraStack Analytics. Everything published. Everything we have internally. And get me whoever originally flagged it for our review list." It had been flagged 8 months ago by a junior analyst named Patricia Gay, 26, the only black woman on the research team, who had written in her note, "Founder profile non-traditional, but algorithm is exceptional. Recommend immediate meeting." The recommendation had been passed up the chain. It had reached Elsa's desk. Elsa had looked at the founder profile, no VC connections, no Ivy League background, Scarborough address, and had passed. 8 months ago, she had passed. Elsa sat with that for a long time. She didn't tell anyone that part. Not yet. That night, Sable drove back to Scarborough in a 2009 Civic that needed new brake pads. She pulled up outside the house her parents still lived in, the same bungalow they'd rented for 19 years, with the garden her mother tended on weekends and the side door that stuck in winter. The porch light was on. It was always on when she was coming home late. Her mother, Grace Oduya, was in the kitchen. 61 years old, small and precise in her movements, with the particular economy of someone who had learned not to waste anything. She was at the stove when Sable came in, and she didn't turn around, just said, "You ate?" "I'm fine, Mama." "That's not what I asked." Sable sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd eaten every meal of her childhood, the same table where she'd first opened that cracked spine Python book at 14. There was still a faint mark on the corner of it from where she used to rest the library book so it didn't close on her. "The meeting went okay," Sable said. Grace turned around. She read her daughter's face the way only a mother can, not the words, the thing underneath the words. What did they do? Sable was quiet for a moment, the usual. Grace made a sound that was not quite a word. She set a plate down in front of Sable and sat across from her. You remember what your father used to say? Sable smiled, small and tired. Every closed door is a wall someone built because they were afraid of what was on the other side, and walls come down. Grace reached across and put her hand over her daughter's, just rested it there. That was all. What Grace Oduya didn't say, because she didn't need to, was that she had worked the night shift at Toronto Western for 12 years so that her daughter would have options. She had come to Canada with $40 and a husband and a determination that had no language for surrender. She had watched Sable build something from nothing with the quiet ferocity of a woman who knew exactly what it had cost. She didn't say any of it. She just kept her hand there. By Thursday morning, Elsa had read everything there was to read about TerraStack. She had also, quietly, read everything there was to read about Sable Oduya, the Scarborough Library, the app sale at 19, the U of T record. The TerraStack algorithm, which two independent analysts she trusted had now described to her using words like generational and unseeable by anyone without a very specific kind of mathematical intuition. She had also reread Patricia Gaya's note from 8 months ago. She called Patricia into her office. Patricia came in with the careful posture of someone who had learned to manage their expectations in this building. 32 years old, sharp, meticulous, had produced more accurate flagging calls than anyone else on the research team in the past 2 years. Had been passed over for senior analyst twice. Your TerraStack note, Elsa said. 8 months ago. Patricia nodded. Said nothing. Waited. You were right. Patricia looked at her. The expression on her face was not triumph. It was something more complicated and more tired than triumph. It was the face of someone who had been right many times, and had learned that being right didn't always mean being heard. I know, Patricia said. The silence that followed was the most honest moment Elsa Murrow had experienced in years. Meanwhile, on the 29th floor, Douglas Aldcroft, managing director, 58 years old, silver-haired, the kind of man who had strong opinions about pocket squares, had heard through the particular wireless network that runs through every professional building, which is gossip, that Elsa was close to moving on TerraStack. He arrived at her office door before lunch. Tell me you're not serious about this, he said. He was already in the chair before she offered it. The founder is 23, no institutional backing, no connective tissue in the sector whatsoever. You saw the background. I saw the algorithm, Elsa said. The algorithm means nothing without the team to scale it. She built it alone in a kitchen in Scarborough. The team is a function of capital. Douglas leaned forward. Elsa, we have a reputation to manage. We bring in a founder with no credentials, no network, straight out of. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The end of it lived in the pause. Elsa looked at him for a moment. Out of where, Douglas? He shifted. I'm talking about optics. I know what you're talking about. She said it without raising her voice. But something in her tone had changed. Something that had been shifting since Tuesday afternoon had quietly arrived at a conclusion. I'm recommending the acquisition to the full partners on Friday, she said. I'd like your support, but I'm making the recommendation regardless. Douglas stood. He straightened his jacket. He gave her the look that senior partners give when they want to communicate that a decision will be remembered. Then he left. Elsa turned back to her desk. She picked up her phone and called Sable. Don't go to San Francisco, she said. A pause. I need an offer. You'll have one by end of day. Another pause. Longer. Then, why the change? Elsa thought about Patricia Gaya's note, about the 8 months, about the word generational, from two analysts she trusted, about the thing Douglas hadn't said out loud. I should have called you 8 months ago, she said. I won't ask you to forgive that right now. I'm just asking you not to take the deal south. The line was quiet for a moment. End of day, Sable said, and hung up. The offer came through at 4:47 p.m. It was fair. Not generous the way offers are generous when they're trying to compensate for guilt. Fair the way offers are fair when someone has actually done the math and respected what the math says. Sable read it at the kitchen table in Scarborough. She read it twice. Then she called her lawyer, a woman named Ruth Ibarra, who had gone to school with Grace Oduya's sister and had been doing Sable's contracts since Terrastack was 2 years old and operating out of a shared desk at a co-working space on Dundas Street. "It's solid," Ruth said. "There's room to push on the equity clause, but the core number is right." "We push on the equity clause," Sable said. They pushed. Caldwell and Pierce moved. By 9 that evening, Sable had countersigned. She called her mother. Grace picked up on the second ring the way she always did when she was already awake and had been waiting. "It's done," Sable said. Grace was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in the particular way she said things when the feeling was too large for regular words, "Your father is here." And even though her father, Emmanuel Oduya, had been gone for 4 years, Sable understood exactly what her mother meant. She pressed the phone against her ear and sat in her car in the driveway of the house she was going to buy her mother next year, and she let herself feel it. All of it. The library, the cracked spine book, the grocery store night shifts, the jacket with the broken zipper, the receptionist's face, the service exit. She let it all the way in. Then she took a breath and let it go. The partnership announcement went public on a Tuesday. By Wednesday afternoon, the story had moved from the business section to the front page of the Globe and Mail's technology coverage. Scarborough-built algorithm lands major Bay Street backing. Founder Sable Oduya, 23, redefines Canadian tech's talent pipeline. It went further than the Globe. LinkedIn picked it up. Then it went somewhere stories go when they've touched something real. It went everywhere. Patricia Gayai's phone rang twice that week from people at other firms wanting to talk about her research methodology. She was also called into a meeting with Elsa, who told her that a senior analyst position had opened and she would like Patricia to take it. Patricia said she would think about it. She didn't say yes immediately, which was the correct response, because you should not say yes immediately to something that should have been offered 2 years ago. She said yes the following Monday. Douglas Aldcroft did not say much publicly. Privately, he told 2 colleagues that the Terrastack deal had been more complex than it appeared from the outside, which is what people say when they want to rewrite their own role in a story that didn't go the way they planned. Elsa Murrow called a full team meeting 3 weeks after the announcement. She didn't have a polished presentation. She had one printed document, a copy of Patricia Gayai's note from 8 months ago. She put it on the table and told the room what had happened. Not the version that made her look like she'd been thoughtful all along. The real version. She said, "I looked at the background of a founder and made a decision before I read a single line of her work. I passed on one of the most significant opportunities this firm has seen in a decade because the person who built it didn't look like the founders I was used to seeing. That was a failure of judgment. It was also something worse, and I want to be honest about that in this room." Nobody spoke. The quiet was different from the usual quiet of meetings. It had weight in it. "We're going to build a formal process for blind stage technical review. Credentials and background come in after the work is evaluated, not before. Patricia is going to lead that process. I expect everyone in this room to take it seriously." She folded the note and put it in her jacket pocket. "That's all," she said. 6 months later, Sable Oduya stood in front of a room of 200 people at a tech conference in Ottawa. Not as a panelist, as the keynote speaker. She was wearing a blazer now. She had bought 3 practical ones, good fabric, nothing performative, but she had also deliberately put a pin through the collar of the first one she ever wore to a pitch meeting. A small brass pin from a hardware store, chosen for no reason except that it was the first thing she'd seen when she'd stopped in to buy a new zipper pull. She talked about algorithms for 20 minutes. Then she stopped. She said, "I want to tell you something that isn't on my slides. 6 months ago, I walked into a meeting wearing a jacket with a broken zipper, and I was asked to leave through the service exit. I didn't leave. I had the meeting. The deal closed that night, and I've thought a lot about what made the difference, and honestly, it wasn't my pitch. My pitch was the same pitch I'd been making for 2 years. What changed was that someone eventually actually looked at the work. She paused. Let the room sit with it. There are people right now who have something extraordinary inside them, and nobody in power has ever thought to actually look. That's not a talent pipeline problem. That's a looking problem. She stepped back from the podium. 200 people were on their feet. In the front row, Grace Oduya, who had taken a half-day off work, the first in 11 months, pressed her hands together under her chin and closed her eyes. I want to talk to you directly for a moment. There's a version of this story where Sable gives up at the service exit, where she decides the signal is clear enough, where the gap between who she is and who that room expects her to be is just too exhausting to keep crossing. A lot of people make that calculation, not because they're weak, because they're human, and humans can only hold the weight of being unseen for so long before something starts to bend. What kept Sable wasn't stubbornness. It wasn't some motivational poster version of grit. It was something simpler and harder than that. She had learned, at a kitchen table in Scarborough, with a crack spine library book and a mother who worked nights and never once used the word impossible, that the work was real whether or not anyone was looking at it. The work was always real. Here's what I want you to carry out of this today. Think of one person you interact with regularly. Your courier, the person who fixes your building's boiler, the kid who works the overnight at the pharmacy. And ask yourself, do I actually know what they know? Not what their role says they know, what they actually know. You might be standing next to something extraordinary and not know it because you've never looked the right way. And if you run something, a team, a company, a department, anything where you decide who gets seen, audit it. Not the resumes, the work, the real living thing that people are capable of when someone finally points the light at them instead of at their credentials. The world doesn't need more open doors. It needs people who stop standing in front of them. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment. Tell me about a time you were the person in the wrong jacket, or the time you were the one who didn't look closely enough, and what happened when you finally did. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this one, already written, already lived, just waiting for someone to finally tell them. Genius doesn't announce itself, it waits to be seen.